morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone from wherever in the world you are joining us. Thank you so much for being here for today's session, Charting the Future, Advancing the SIDS Agenda for the Next Decade. It is my pleasure to be moderating this session and introducing the first speakers. My name is James Elsmore, the CEO of Island Innovation, and we are very happy to be hosting this Island Finance Forum once again this year to discuss the key issues for island nations and island territories when it comes to financing sustainable development. This specific session will be bearing in mind the SIDS Future Forum that happened this week. And so I'll later be introducing our co-moderator, Emily Wilkinson from Odie, who hosted that event in New York. And several of us are freshly arrived back home from a busy week at those sessions in New York. And of course, looking forward to May for the SIDS for the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States held by the United Nations, with, of course, in mind that SIDS 4 is really just the start of a journey, planning the Antigua and Barbuda Accord, which will chart the path for SIDS development for the next 10 years. So, with that, I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker. We're very pleased to be joined today by the Honorable Mark Brantley, the Premier of Nevis and the former Minister of Foreign Affairs for St. Kitts and Nevis. So, Premier Brantley, thank you for joining us, and over to you to kick off the session.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Can everyone hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, excellent. So small island developing states, of course, are a distinct group of 39 states and 18 associate members of the United Nations regional commissions that face unique social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities. One such area, of course, is the Caribbean, and I speak to you today from the island of Nevis, the smaller of the Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean. Since 1992, at the UN conference in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, SIDS were recognized as a special case requiring special attention due to the unique social, economic, and environmental challenges that they face. For the ensuing 3 decades, the world has continued to recognize and redefine the pathway to sustainable development in small island states. In 1994, we had the Barbados Program of Action and the Barbados Declaration, which declared the political will to achieve the proposed plan of action. In 2005, we had the Mauritius Strategy for further implementation of the Barbados Plan of Action, which was adopted to address remaining gaps in implementation. In 2014, the international community gathered again, this time in Samoa, to forge a new pathway for the sustainable development of SIDS, and this culminated in what we now know as the Samoa Pathway. In May 2024, in just a few months, the world will again convene in Antigua and Barbuda to discuss SIDS and our collective path forward. While many SIDS have made advances in achieving sustainable development, we have certain inherent vulnerabilities, including our small size, climate change impacts, biodiversity loss, and of course, our very small resource base. All this together means that progress for many of us continues to be compromised. The truth be told, that some of the needed architecture to realize the aspirations set out in the Samoa Pathway lies beyond the human and economic capacity of many small island developing states. While the world has recognized time and time again the imperative of SIDS being a unique category of countries requiring special attention, those countries with the economic might have not been quite as willing to provide the necessary financing to realize that imperative. We need only look at the hurricane season of 2017 here in the Caribbean, still fresh in our collective memory, when hurricanes Irma and Maria swept through our region, destroying infrastructure, lives, and livelihoods in Dominica, and rendering Barbuda uninhabitable for the first time in over 200 years. Slower events such as sea level rise pose an existential threat to small island communities, and especially our critical tourism infrastructure, which is largely located along Caribbean coastlines. In St. Kitts and Nevis, our government has declared its ambitions to become a model sustainable island state. Utilizing the tenets outlined in the SIDS Accelerated Modalities Samoa Pathway, as well as the provisions made in the SIDS-4 draft outcome document as guideposts to contextualize overall progress in St. Kitts and Nevis, I now outline a brief snapshot. 1. Section A of the draft outcome document highlights resilient economies as a necessary aspect of the SIDS agenda. In this regard, St. Kitts and Nevis has created a Small Business Development Center to offer technical assistance and training as support for medium, small, and micro enterprises. In Nevis, we have offered seed capital of up to $40,000 to women and youth entrepreneurs to generate interest and course and capitalize their small businesses. We have created the Ministry of Small Business and Entrepreneurship and Sports and the Creative Economy as a means of economic diversification and expansion. We have created a National Sustainable Island State Agenda that fully includes economic development and investment as drivers of sustainable development. We have implemented the Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Marine Resource Act to promote and regularize sustainable use of land practices in and around our marine resources, including the use of sustainable fishing practices. Section B of the draft outcome document speaks of safe and prosperous societies in SIDS. In this regard, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have partnered to adopt the Metabolic Disease Project, which aims to minimize incidence and assist with the management of non-communicable diseases. We have introduced the SKN Moves initiative as a national branch, as an offshoot of the regional CARICOM initiative. We have collaborated with the Stanford University Self-Management Program to expand and sustain a trained, skilled, and efficient health workforce. We have opened the Dr. Arthur Lake Mental Health Treatment Center in St. Kitts and the Behavioral and Wellness Center in Nevis to better deliver mental health services. And we invested in state-of-the-art equipment at our local hospitals, hosted national consultations with youth to involve them in the decision-making processes, and launched a Women's Employment and Entrepreneurship and Financial Inclusion Project as a mechanism to empower women through entrepreneurship. Section C of the SIDS-4 draft speaks to a secure future. This considers renewable energy, water, food, energy nexus, resilient infrastructure, and transport and connectivity. In that regard, we have collaboratively pursued the development of geothermal energy on Nevis by the St. Kitts and Nevis National Assembly resolution on geothermal energy. This is anticipated to make St. Kitts and Nevis the first country in the world where 100% of its energy needs will be supplied by renewables. Our ambition is to earn the title of the greenest place on planet Earth. Energy security, offering cheap green power, allows us to deploy desalination efforts on a large scale to supply potable water at scale, which then allows us to better deploy for food production. We therefore see energy security leading to water security, leading to greater food security in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have also implemented the Water Energy Food Nexus project in collaboration with the FAO to support capacity building through climate smart agriculture technology with the use of solar power drip irrigation and water harvesting systems. We have introduced the St. Kitts Nevis Layered Chicken Industry Sustainable Development Project, which seeks to establish a poultry industry. And we've adopted the CARICOM's 25 by 2025 Food Security Initiative. We've also provided local farmers with drought-tolerant materials, shade houses to encourage climate-smart agricultural practices, and we've provided housing solutions for thousands of families across the Federation. Section D of the draft outcome document speaks to environmental protection and planetary sustainability. In this regard, St. Kitts and Nevis has implemented a ban on single-use plastics. We've partnered to implement the St. Kitts and Nevis Solid Waste Management Recycling Project. We have created the Invasive Alien Species Department and partnered with Jeff and the OECS to continue raising community awareness on the harms of invasive alien species. We've strengthened the national multi-hazard early warning systems as a means of disaster risk reduction and mitigation. At the regional and international levels, St. Kitts and Nevis continues to lend its voice to the critical need for the expeditious operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund coming out of COP28. We also continue to echo the regional call for the actualization of the multidimensional vulnerability index to provide relief to small island developing states. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have used this snapshot to give a sense of progress in my own country, St. Kitts and Nevis, in the SIDS agenda, but I believe we can all agree that more needs to be done, and more needs to be done at pace and at scale if we are to realize the promise of the international community to assist the smallest and most vulnerable nations of the world. To do so, we need more than words and further declarations. We need tangible, realizable, and visible action. As we see wars and rumors of wars, and trillions of dollars being readily made available to fund death and destruction, we of the Caribbean civilization await the global realization that sustainability of SIDS is critical to the sustainability of our planet, and the sustainability of our planet is critical to the survival of humankind. We are faced then not with the fierce urgency of now, but with the fierce urgency of yesterday. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussions.
Honorable Premier, thank you so much for sharing those reflections with us today. And I really wanted to note the importance of the leadership role that the state of St. Kitts and Nevis has been taking in regards to the Sustainable Development Agenda and related matters, specifically this week with the Honorable Minister Joel Clark being appointed to the very prestigious United Nations Environmental Assembly Bureau. I think this is great recognition of the efforts being made by St. Kitts and Nevis when it comes to financing sustainable development and the commitment to becoming a sustainable island state. We're also delighted that a delegation, including Minister Clark from St. Kitts and Nevis, will be joining the Island Innovation's own event, the Global Sustainable Island Summit, in May this year in Prince Edward Island, along with a number of other delegations from governments around the Caribbean, Europe, and the Pacific. This event is really our flagship in-person opportunity to meet with the island innovation community. We have over 20 government ministers confirmed, in addition to numerous representatives from the private sector and other intergovernmental agencies. So this will be a really great opportunity for any of you attending the Island Finance Forum to also join us for an in-person event. And please do check out the reminder emails that you'll be receiving from us, where there will be a discount on offer to all Island Finance Forum registrants. I also wanted to mention before we go to our next speaker that this session is being streamed on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So hello to everyone who is joining us from those different channels, and do feel free to comment in the thread on any of those channels, YouTube as well, by the way, and we will make sure to try and include those comments here where possible. And finally, I can see that we have a poll in of our attendees here in the Zoom. So I see around just over half of people, as might be expected, joining from the Caribbean. And then the others, a mixture of people from Europe, North America, Africa, and the Pacific. I can see around 25% of people in NGOs, 40% in the private sector, and then others from government and academia. So a great mixture of people joining here to look at the course for SIDS development over the next decade. So with that in mind, I'd like to invite Dr. Emily Wilkinson, who will be the co-moderator for the rest of the session, to join on screen. And Emily, we've had a very busy week, so thank you for joining for this. I know you've just got home after a busy time in New York. For those who aren't aware, can you please tell us some more about Resi and the SIDS Future Forum and the main activities that have been taking place this week.
Yes, thanks very much, James, and thanks for the invitation to come to join this session to talk a bit about the SIDS Future Forum. So I'm the director of the Resilient and Sustainable Islands Initiative, RESI, which is a global advisory network supporting small island developing states to sustain development gains and build resilience in the context of climate change. And we do policy-oriented research and convening, engaging with the media and advocating for SIDS and issues that are important to small island states. And one of the things that we thought was important to do and to organize in advance of the SIDS4 conference, which, as you mentioned, is coming up at the end of May this year, was to convene a discussion amongst policymakers and experts on delivering the SIDS4 agenda. So a lot of the discussions in release that started in the summer last year in the regional preparatory meetings that were organized, and then there was a interregional event in Cabo Verde, were very much focused on agreeing the priorities between SIDS first kind of in different regions and then across regions, and all of that has been captured and fed into the zero draft of the outcome document. So a lot of attention on the outcome document. The negotiations are still ongoing. But what we really wanted to do was give negotiators an opportunity to experience and learn from studies and expert analysis and evidence on related to the 5 thematic areas of the outcome document, on how SIDS have been able to achieve progress on these issues in the past, what the obstacles are, and policy recommendations for scaling up examples, initiatives, good practice across all SIDS and how that could happen. So the discussion that we had on Monday this week at the SIDS Future Forum 2024, the very first SIDS Future Forum, which was entitled Charting the Future, Advancing the SIDS Agenda for the Next Decade, we had a very robust discussion with SIDS delegates based in New York at the permanent missions around these 5 thematic areas to really begin to set out an agenda for delivering on SIDS4. The 5 thematic areas that were discussed, which are in the outcome document, are resilient economies, safe and prosperous societies, a secure future, as was mentioned before by the Premier, and environmental protection and planetary sustainability. And then the 5th one is means of implementation. So that's really what's required in terms of finance, technology transfer, data, capacity development, all of that, governance, all that will be required to deliver on all across all the thematic areas. So maybe I can just highlight some of the outcomes of the Future Forum. This will be very brief, and we will be producing an outcome document which will be shared widely, and I would be keen to get feedback from anybody listening who's interested in the results of the discussion. So the key outcomes were, I would say, that there was a really strong emphasis and focus on collaboration and collective action. SIDS are not going to be able to achieve resilient prosperity and make real progress across all of these agendas over the next decade without concerted coordination between all stakeholders. So working together through platforms for cooperation on these agendas. And I think identifying who those stakeholders are, what initiatives already exist and how they can be better oriented to supporting SIDS, and finding ways of collaborating between stakeholders on these agendas is going to be something that needs to be established really early on in the SIDS4 program of action. The second outcome and from the discussion was really the need to identify very clear objectives or targets for the next 10 years that are evidence-driven, so that progress can then be measured towards these targets. I think having very sort of concrete ideas of what SIDS want to achieve collectively over the next 10 years, where they want to be in 2034, is really key to maintaining the kind of political momentum and interest, and tracking progress, reflecting it and course correcting if necessary. So I think that's a really important next step, to be able to identify those kind of collective outcome targets. The third sort of key message that came out of the discussion was the need for commitments, particularly from development partners, and a clear commitment from the UN to support SIDS in implementing the 10-year agenda. It was noted in many of the discussions that SIDS are already doing a lot, and what's really needed is strong commitments from the international community to support implementation of the agenda. So once the agenda has been agreed, negotiated, agreed, the outcome document is there, we then need to see very strong commitments from development partners to help achieving that, whether that's in the form of financing initiatives, providing kind of technical support. One of the proposals is a centre of excellence, which will be hosted by the government of Antigua and Barbuda, which would have a data hub in it. So these are some of the particular sort of deliverables that are going to be really important, and the international community needs to get behind and support. And finally, just to continue with the point on data, one of the other very clear points that was made during the discussion was the need for not just data, but a sort of minimum level of capacity for data collection and analysis. There are so many data gaps and limits to our sort of knowledge and understanding of SIDS context and progress on SDGs and other international frameworks, that is very clearly a gap that needs filling, because in order to have the evidence to be able to monitor progress and to really understand where the challenges continue to be, we need to have that level of information and capacity. So let me close there. Sorry, I've maybe spoken a little too long, but it was a really very exciting discussion. Thanks, James.
Thank you so much, Emily. No, that was a great overview, and lots more to come. We're looking forward to seeing the papers and the outputs for the SIDS Future Forum and the other announcements that will be coming up. So we have 3 other speakers, which we will run through and get some opening remarks from each before we go into the discussion, and would invite any questions or comments. You can go ahead and type those into the chat or Q&A box, ideally the Q&A box, please, to share your comments. So next I will invite Dr. José Lopes from the Higher Institute of Economic and Business Sciences of Cabo Verde. José, if you're there, we would love your comments from a Cabo Verdean perspective on the activities that have been discussed this week. You were also in the SIDS Future Forum and also in the lead up to SIDS4. There we go.
Thank you, James, once again, and also thank you, the other speakers, Mr. Prime Minister and Dr. Emily, for very interesting and summary that she has just made about the SIDS Future Forum that we just had in New York. It's a great honor to be here in this panel with such honorable speakers. Well, what I can tell you from the perspective of an islander, Cape Verdean, what I used to say is that Cape Verde is an example that it's possible for SIDS to move up with the right resources, with the right support from its partners, but also with the right management. Cape Verde has been cited and as an example of a country that has learned and actually has made very good use and effective use of the resources that have been put for its management. We, after our independence, as I said in New York, that we were expected to fail, but thanks to our supporters and thanks to our leaders, we have made this way into, we have made a success way, I may say, that usually Cape Verde is depicted as. So what we are concerned now in Cape Verde, as Mr. Prime Minister said, we have two sectors, actually three sectors that have been identified as the driver of our economy as a small island. First is energy transition. So the country is very committed to put forward a energy transition plan. And actually by 2030, the goal is to reach 50% of energy penetration, clean energy penetration in the national grid. And by 2040, the goal is to reach 100%. So that's an ambitious goal, and we think that it's possible. Now, the percentage is around 20%, because the cost energy is one of the biggest hindrance for our business development. And having identified that we have been working so hard, to reduce this cost and help the country move forward. The second one is economy, what they call a digital economy. As a country, an island country with a lack of resources, we have to invest in the digital transition if we want to move forward. So that will help us with our administrative work, with connecting the islands, and also doing that kind of investment will certainly attract even foreign investors, to invest in the country, generating jobs and providing service not only for the country, but also for the other countries. So the idea is to make the country a digital hub that can provide digital services to other countries. That's so important because, as I said, that will contribute to our capacity building, generating new kind of and better paid jobs for our people, and perhaps for other people that will see Cape Verde as a model. The third driver is tourism. Well, that is an advantage that we have been having in Cape Verde. Cape Verde, it's 20% of its GDP comes from tourism, and the plan is to make it even grow by 2030 to achieve 26 or 27. So that is also a challenge, because as we have just witnessed during the 20 with the COVID-19, so when you invest so much in just one sector, you also have the risks that you may come when shocks occur, as 2020 occurs, showed us. So the idea is also to invest in the diversification of tourism. So now our tourism is so concentrated into islands and what we call the all-inclusive tourism. And this kind of tourism, surely it generates jobs, it generates incomes from the state, but the profits are mostly expatriated. So investing in the diversification of the tourism activities and also in the economies is a way to help the country move forward. So, but none of these things can be done. Cape Verde and other SIDS, I suppose, can achieve these transformational goals alone. So there should be support from our partners. And when we talk about partners, as Dr. Emily mentioned during her speech, we are talking about better governance and collaborative governance. So, and when we talk about collaborative governance, we are talking about, bringing partners, northern, southern partners together, private sector, civil society together, but there should be put in place mechanisms that bring all these actors together in, platforms of collaboration. Right from the beginning of, in terms of planning policies, implementing policies. So what the policies should be put in place, and what institutions or institutional re-engineering needs to be implemented so that policies designed meet the goals that they're meant to. Because as we have seen, there have been so many commitments about SIDS since 1994 with the Barbados Programs of Action and the Mauritius and also the Samoa pathway. But what I think is that there should be collaborative governance structures in place that guarantee that the commitments made are implemented effectively. And for that, we do need collaborations from partners, not only within SIDS, but also from other boards. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was a great overview of some of the key challenges. And it's great to see how Cabo Verde has been taking an important role in these discussions, hosting some of the earlier discussions, and also again at this week's event with both yourself and also representatives from the New York mission taking an active role. So we'll come back to you for the Q&A shortly. Thank you. I'd like to next invite our next speaker, Deodat Maharaj, who's the Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency, to give some comments about how particularly the private sector can be a key driver for some of these 10-year goals. So Deodat, over to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, James, and I'm really delighted to be here. And I would like to congratulate you, James, and your team for continuing to advocate so effectively for small island developing states. I would want to echo the sentiments of my dear friend, Premier Brantley, and it was good to hear the thoughts expressed by the colleague from Cabo Verde as well. I think notwithstanding the distance, specific SIDS or SIDS of the coast of Africa to Caribbean SIDS, the issues and challenges are the same. Caribbean Export, if I just may make an observation, is the regional institution here in the Caribbean with the remit of promoting private sector development, promoting Caribbean trade globally, and steering investments our way. I think that we are the only such entity in any SIDS region. And I think from my standpoint, and having served in the UN, the Commonwealth, and been in fora like this previously, I think that one missing element oftentimes is the fact that business has a really important and central role to play in building resilience in SIDS, whether they're in the Pacific where I've served previously, or the Caribbean, or African SIDS, or SIDS in the Mensa region. So business has a really important role to play. And why am I saying that business has an important role to play? Because at the end of the day, we want to build resilience for a sustainable future, but whilst doing so, to create opportunities and jobs for our people, well-paying and sustainable jobs. And when we look at the data, certainly in the case of the Caribbean, the majority of businesses are actually not big businesses. They're not multinational corporations. They are micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. And why are they important? Actually, in the Caribbean, micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises account for around 70% of the businesses in the region, around 65 to 75% of total employment, and around 70% of the region's total GDP. So when we talk about building a resilience agenda and advancing the cause of SIDS, obviously, business has a very important and critical role to play, particularly indigenous businesses. But when we think about a resilience agenda, and I very much look forward to the next global conference in Antigua and Barbuda, I mean, we have been lobbying heavily, and I'm part of the business advisory group that has been established as part of this SIDS agenda and SIDS global conference taking place in Antigua in May of this year, is that we have to create a platform in SIDS. To my mind, I certainly take the point and recognize the imperative of mobilizing grant and concessional financing from the international financial institutions and the bilateral and multilateral donors. I mean, that I strongly support and endorse. At the same time, the reason we want to do that and we want to engage with business is because we in SIDS countries, we want to stand on our own 2 feet. And one vital way to get that, a key element of that strategy, is really having a very pro-business, a pro-trade, and a pro-investment agenda. Time is limited, so I could only perhaps make a few key points along these lines. Firstly, when we look at the data, we see the trade from SIDS as a percentage of world trade is actually declining, and it's certainly so in the case of the Caribbean. So we need to find ways to support businesses that are producing a premium product for a premium market and where they can fetch a premium price. Rum from the Caribbean is a great example. We can't continue to depend exclusively on tourism. On the investment side, we need to find ways to boost our foreign direct investment flows and to boost intra-regional investment. And why do we need to do this? Because when we look at the data, certainly in the case of Caribbean countries, the Caribbean SIDS are the most highly indebted group of countries on this planet of ours. And therefore, they have limited fiscal space to take on additional debt stock to build resilience. Hence, FDI is so absolutely critical. But when we are talking about FDI at the Caribbean Export Development Agency, we need to focus on sectors that can drive transformation. So actually to have investment in 3 areas we are focusing on. 1, green economy transition, recognizing our climate vulnerability. A study that was done by the ILO and the Inter-American Development Bank in the Caribbean concluded that a green economy transition in the Caribbean would result in the creation of an additional 400,000 jobs. Again, the emphasis has to be on self-sufficiency, on standing on our own 2 feet, and building resilience. So 1, green economy transition is a vital area for investment. Secondly, the whole area of digitalization, technology, and innovation, what it would allow us to do is to leapfrog in terms of development gains. So we at Caribbean Export are placing a big emphasis on getting investments in the area of innovation, digitalization, and technology. And thirdly, on the investment front, agriculture. Why is agriculture so important? Because certainly in the Caribbean, we are the most food insecure region on the planet. And as a consequence, we need to boost our food security. It creates jobs, it creates opportunity for our people. But in terms of investment, we also recognize the limitations of size. And that's why technology is important. So the focus for us is obviously on sustainable agriculture, but on boosting technology or in agriculture or ag tech. So when we think about farming, we're thinking about lettuce not on the earth or on the ground, but vertically like a skyscraper. So we need to leverage hydroponics and new technologies to boost production so we can be self-sufficient, but also create jobs and opportunity for our people. So on the investment side for us, to recap, and it follows what Mark was saying earlier, and I love what he said about St. Kitts' aspiration to be the greenest place on planet Earth. A, boost investment, green economy transition, digitalization and technology and innovation. And the third, in agriculture, particularly leveraging technology in agriculture. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you, Deodat. And I really appreciated that link to what the previous speaker, Jose, had said about the digital opportunities. And that I completely agree with what you said about the opportunity for leapfrogging there being a key point, in addition to the economic arguments to differentiate Caribbean and other SIDS exports through sustainable branding and a sustainable development image. So lots of great points there. And I think thank you very much for the work that your agency has done to further those goals. So before we go into the questions, and I can see a good few questions now coming into the chat. Please do, if you can, add your name and organization when you ask a question, so we're able to identify those. I'll invite our final speaker, Zulmira Rodriguez, who is the chief of the SIDS section at UNESCO. So Zulmira, I think, has joined us. If you'd like to come on screen, it would be great to hear. There we go, the perspective from UNESCO. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, James, for giving us the opportunity to talk, and apologies for joining a bit late. You know, the SIDS section reflects a bit the reality of the SIDS. Lots of ambition and enthusiasm, but limited resources. Anyway, having said that, I would like to then, can you see me?
Yes, we can see and hear you great.
Perfect. Okay, so let me start. Okay, UNESCO has actually, since 1996, UNESCO has started paying special attention to SIDS and developed a dedicated program to tackle the challenges and the concerns of SIDS. And since 2008, SIDS have become a priority group. So UNESCO has 4 priorities. 2 are global and 2 are priority groups. The 2 global priorities are Africa and gender, and the 2 priority groups are SIDS and youth. Just to tell you how important we place SIDS in our agenda. Last year in November, during our 42nd General Conference session, UNESCO has adopted for the first time a specific operational strategy for SIDS that runs from 2023 to 2029. This operational strategy is composed by 6 accelerator programs, reflecting actually the 6 main areas of competences of the organization. So the SIDS operational strategy has as aim actually to strengthen SIDS environmental, institutional, social, and human resilience, and developing initiatives that are designed with and for SIDS to respond to their specific needs. Just a quick overview. So UNESCO is actually a very broad organization that works through 6 thematic sectors. One very known is education, but we have also natural sciences, social and human sciences, oceans through the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. UNESCO is the only UN organization that has a dedicated sector only for oceans, which is very important for SIDS given that they are large ocean states. Then we have culture and communication information. So through these 6 sectors, we try to support member states, and in this case, in specific SIDS, on the areas that of their specific concern. So with these 6 accelerator programs, we are developing specific initiatives, and every biennium, we launch 3 to 4 new initiatives per accelerator. So then we have, I'm not going to go into accelerators. We will be able to share with you if you want the SIDS operational strategy. But let me just summarize what we try to do in the area of education, communication, information. So we put a strong emphasis on inclusion of girls and women in education, in particular STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We put a lot of emphasis on improving digital learning platforms, not only because COVID-19 has shown the vulnerability on education systems, but even when SIDS are affected by major disasters, often it impacts very negatively on the access to education by students. So we are supporting member states to address the digital divide in education, but also supporting them in getting access to digital technologies and resources. We also have developed the recommendations for ethical artificial intelligence to regulate AI as AI for the good of all. So UNESCO takes care of these parts to ensure that due attention is given for countries that have specific needs and limited resources like SIDS. And of course, we are working on supporting research and capacity through supporting higher education. We believe that while most SIDS have made major strides in achieving universal education for all, there is a huge challenge in terms of having a high level capacity. So by supporting higher education, and in particular engaging with partners like UNDESA and OSHA-RLS, we are trying to support the revitalization of the university consortium of SIDS so that we can indeed build that platform for capacity for research and training. And then we also give a huge impact on climate change mitigation, adaptation, by also recognizing, using, of course, our natural science platform, but also recognizing nature-based solutions and putting a lot of emphasis on indigenous and local knowledge in finding solutions for climate change mitigation and also for adaptation and mitigation of impact of major disasters. Now, and we have a large emphasis also on promoting open data, open research, and open materials. UNESCO has made its own resources open already for more than 20 years, and we try to promote this with countries. Now, in the area of oceans, as you know, UNESCO leads the Decade for Ocean Sciences, which promotes actually capacities of member states, whereby SIDS as a major oceans states, promoting their capacity on improving sustainable use of oceans, in particular also spatial planning, reducing ocean acidification and pollution, and promoting the open sciences decade. And which few people know, UNESCO is the major promoter and supporter of the early warning systems for all, in particular in tsunami warning, which we are now expanding to also encompass other major threats. Now, in culture, of course, many of you well know the World Heritage Sites, which is the biggest brand of UNESCO. But besides the heritage, safeguarding and promotion, we also work a lot on promoting intangible heritage. Intangible heritage, which is key for promoting culture identity, but also in terms of promoting the cultural and creative industries. Now, in the area of social human sciences, we work a lot on creating these safe and inclusive societies, looking at the role of youth and young people in terms of having a say in and participate in decision-making processes, and supporting them by empowering them. UNESCO is proud to be the catalyst for many youth networks that have been engaging in all areas of relevance, and including for SIDS. So in all these areas, UNESCO tries to work through its 5 functions: setting standards, building capacity, doing the normative work, being a laboratory of ideas, and supporting policy formulation. We are very invested in SIDS4. We are part and parcel of the process of preparation. And we are very pleased to engage with you in further dialogue. How can we best support the agenda for SIDS? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zulmira, for that overview of the work of UNESCO and the contribution to the SIDS4 and the 10-year agenda. I'd like to invite all of our speakers to join us on camera. And for the last 10 minutes, we don't have too much time. I have 2 questions that I wanted to focus on. So I might go around and you can kind of jump in on either of those. The first one comes from Michelle Lee from the Climate Policy Initiative, is asking, what is the role of private finance when it comes to supporting the implementation of the 10-year agenda. And I think this is an absolutely critical question. There's many different ways that that could be answered by our speakers. And then a connected but different question from Juan Diego Prado from the Environmental Defense Fund is asking about the establishment of regional frameworks to aid the development of renewable energy for African SIDS specifically. And I think this question could be broadened more to talk about the regional frameworks beyond renewable energy. Again, something that was discussed during the SIDS Future Forum this week was specifically on the differences between the three main SIDS regions in the regional support that exists there and how that affects the implementation. So two different questions there. I'll take volunteers to jump in on either of those from our speakers. I'd like to go first. Emily.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in very briefly on those 2 points. On the role of the private sector, well, private finance, actually one of the proposals as part of the Centre of Excellence, which I mentioned, is to run a SIDS investment forum, which would be something like a kind of Davos for SIDS, which I think is a really excellent idea, which would bring together private investors with small island developing states to look at project ideas, pipeline of projects, look at discuss the enabling environment, the institutions to support these kind of investments. So I think that initiative could provide an excellent platform to identify those opportunities for private finance to come in and support SIDS on some of the sort of key domestic policies and initiatives that they want to advance. And just to say on the regional frameworks very quickly, there was a very interesting discussion in the SIDS Future Forum about creating a regional platform entity for the ACE region, which doesn't have in the same way as the Caribbean and the Pacific a sort of regional body to represent the interests of member state SIDS in that region, which I think is missing and really important. The regional organizations we know play a really critical role in collecting data, representing their member states in applying for climate finance as direct access entities, many other roles. So I think that's something that I'd like to see taken forward in the SIDS4 agenda.
Thank you, Emily. And for those who aren't aware, the AIMS region is the third SIDS region in addition to the Pacific and the Caribbean, which covers a vast area from the northwest coast of Africa, Cabo Verde, right across the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. So a number of different regional, economic, cultural groupings covered under that region. I saw Premier Brantley, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, just very quickly, James, just in addition to what Emily has pointed out, I think that the difficulty we've had here in St. Kitts and Nevis from a very practical point of view is that private finance is private finance. It's largely driven by profit and profit considerations. And one may well wish to make the argument that that might not be best suited as a financing vehicle for some of the work that we need to do to achieve the SIDS4 agenda. I say that because let us take as an example our geothermal exploration project here in St. Kitts and Nevis, a project that has the potential to revolutionize this part of the region, a project which, based on the science, tells us that we have more energy than can be consumed in St. Kitts and Nevis, which means that there's considerable downside use for it, downstream use. There's considerable potential for even the export of renewable energy to neighboring islands. But that project has struggled for 2 decades. It has struggled for 2 decades because invariably we have gone to various private funding institutions, and their primary concern is how much money can we make from this project? And so we've had responses like, oh, this project is just too small. The scale of it is not what we would consider, because looking at it the payback over whatever period of time. Many have come and said, listen, we're ready to invest, but we want sovereign guarantees because we want to ensure that there is no possibility of loss to us. So in our experience, we have found that private capital might not be the best way. And perhaps what we need is some type of mix of private capital and public funds. If the world truly believes that SIDS are important, and the world accepts, as I think it should, that much of the difficulties that SIDS face have not been caused by us. And I use climate change as a prime example. I recall speaking at the UN some years ago and saying that in a very real way, the Caribbean was being asked to cash a check it didn't write because we are paying for the excesses elsewhere. So in a very real way, I think that SIDS and SIDS development and our response to some of these challenges has to be seen as a global public good. And that funds as a result ought to flow on that basis, as opposed to saying to us, many of us, as my friend Deodat has pointed out, already strapped in terms of high debt, that we should go out to the market to seek funding, to build resilience, and to build adaptation strategies. So I think the world needs to come to grips with the reality that we as SIDS are being asked to carry a burden that we did very little to contribute to. And as a consequence, we feel that our survival, as I said in my opening remarks, is part of our planet's survival, and our planet's survival is critical for the global survival of humankind. And so that's how I think we ought to look at this, because I've had very deep concern that private financing simply isn't adequate, because the drivers for private financing aren't always met in small projects in SIDS, but small projects that could be revolutionary in terms of our national borders.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier, for that comment. And I think that's exactly why we convened the Island Finance Forum as a global event looking at the specific issues that come with scale, often is one of the biggest challenges, and specifically the high cost of money and investment that SIDS faced when compared to other nations. So I think naturally, Deodat, it'd be great to hear your response to those comments.
Yeah, I think that for SIDS, we need to have a range of financial instruments. And I take the point what Mark has said fully, and I agree with him. We need public, free grant and concessional financing that has a space. I also believe that private financing also has an important role. And one is not, as Mark said, at the exclusion of the other. In response to what Emily said, I mean, we actually have already started convening the Caribbean Investment Forum. The first iteration was in Trinidad in November 2022, second in the Bahamas last October, the third, 10 to 12 July 2024 in Guyana. And we actually have been stunned by the response. We stopped registration at like 500 in Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas a bit over 500 people, but 90% were business people and people with projects. The challenge, Emily, that you will face in just convening, because you can't convene because there's a need. You have to convene where you can have impact and add value, is that there's a lack of projects. So what we are doing, we are working with local businesses, we are working with governments in actually developing projects. So when an investor comes, for example, there's a project that you can present, not a concept, not an idea, not just green economy transition, but where is a geothermal project? Where is a solar project? Where is a wave energy project? So I think there's absolutely a space, but the key really is to focus on sectors that could help drive transformation. So you don't try to attract investment across the board, which we are often driven to because of our own financial constraints and situation. The second issue has to do with the establishment of regional frameworks. I mean, the Caribbean has done a splendid job. Of course, our institutions, including mine, can be even better. But the fact that you have a Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, really reflects the wisdom of people in government like Mark and others to create that regional framework. The fact that we have a Caribbean Center for Climate Change accredited to the GCF is a big plus for us as a region. The fact that we have a Caribbean Development Bank in the region, providing financing in the region is a big plus for us. So I think that there's a lot that the rest of the SIDS can learn from our part of the world as well. The last point, we speak a lot about financing. I've been in this field for a long time, and that is absolutely critical. But what is also important is implementation. And what I see, including in my role here and in previous iterations, including serving in Africa, is oftentimes we do have some money and we're not spending the money effectively. So that issue of implementation is a big, big issue that we also need to overcome. Because what we want to do for sure as SIDS is that we want to stand on our own 2 feet. And that's why we need a range of financial instruments that could enable us to achieve that objective. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deodat. And those are some great points there. I think it's very hard to have this conversation without talking about the importance of regionalism when it comes to SIDS. There was a question here as well from Hans Bergma asking exactly about the regional bundling of different islands and projects, which I know is something that's often mooted, and probably we could have an entire session just to discuss about the opportunities and challenges when it comes to regional bundling. Jose, is there anything that you'd like to come in on some of these comments that were made?
Yes, thank you, James. No, very quickly regarding private finance. Another research that I'm involved in. So there are some people talking about having SIDS financial institutions like SIDS Bank, very similar to what they have, a bank for the Caribbean region. So how important would it be to think about, creating a SIDS investment bank? Or some people talk about a SIDS fund, to kind of generate or bringing in finance capital, or even also public capital in a way to have, money for private investments. I mean, for local private investments, or also for people outside of SIDS but who want to invest in SIDS. So there's this conversation going on, and also new financial finance mechanisms. Like in Cape Verde now, we have been implementing what they call social bonds, blue bonds, or even green bonds. And there are, some initiatives that have started to bear fruit. These can also be mechanisms that can be tried in some other places. But also regarding the AIM SIDS, we've been talking about this, how to bring SIDS in Africa together. Well, having initiatives like what we are having this, this is a global event, but perhaps one of the means that we can implement is organizing, AIM's local farmers like this, so that we can start bringing people together, and that would probably, end up with kinds of organizations that will bring us together. I do think that AIM SIDS, in fact, needs a better, I would say, policy coordination. We have the challenge that is distance, and we have, such multicultural, I would say, dynamism that can to a certain extent hamper collaboration. But I do think that having forums like what we are having now, specifically for SIDS, the conversation will start, bearing fruits into broader regional organizations.
Absolutely. And I think we need to underline that point that across the SIDS globally, there is, of course, a huge diversity in many of these different challenges. And although there are many shared challenges, there are also many differences that come between the regions. I'll go to you, Deodat, just for a very quick comment, if that's okay, before I go to Zulmira to wrap up with final words. Oh.
Just to respond to the point of innovative financial instruments, we launched in the Caribbean just like maybe 2 months ago, a CARICOM Resilience Fund, getting and providing an avenue to get financing to on-lend to member states. And secondly, the Pacific, I don't know if anybody from the Pacific is here, but I was involved in the establishment of a Pacific Resilience Facility, which is a trust fund arrangement where the returns from the fund will be used to invest in small-scale climate resilient infrastructure. So the money, you don't spend the money, you just spend the returns on the investment. So it's self-sustaining and it can last into perpetuity. So that's like another innovative instrument that we need to put our minds to. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Zulmira?
Now, from the point of view of UNESCO, actually, just 2 hours ago, we had a meeting, what we call the Friends of SIDS. These are member states, ambassadors, that are keen on supporting the implementation of the operational strategy, meaning providing the resources that are needed to do so. And there are at this moment 60 member states that call themselves Friends of SIDS, and we are discussing the problems of resource mobilization for the implementation of those programs. And one of these important partners that has been not tapped enough to is the private sector, but I'm talking really about at national level. You know, of course, we talk about social corporate responsibility, but actually we should go beyond that. Many of the economic areas that SIDS are promoting now, we have key major private sectors playing a role in those economic areas. If you talk about tourism, for instance, I mean, the whole network of airlines, cruise businesses, hotels, they are all benefiting from the pristine opportunity that SIDS are offering. How are we tapping into those stakeholders, making them co-responsible for supporting a sustainable development in SIDS that will also address the needs of the countries? How can we then also make them responsible for promoting the biodiversity that we'll need to keep fisheries as one of the important resources for SIDS? We are not talking about deep sea mining. This is going to happen. And so how are we tackling the need to involve those stakeholders to have them contribute to minimizing the challenges that SIDS are facing? When we talk about digital transformation, reducing the digital divide, we saw with COVID-19, we were trying to mobilize partners to support countries. They all wanted to go to countries with large populations, because these tech industries, they want to tap onto the possibility of getting gains from large populations, which is not the case with small island states. So how do we make them also responsible to support these small countries? So, I mean, it's not only developing these funds, they are all important as well, but I think it is really important to make private sector operating in SIDS, profiting from the SIDS, also co-responsible for driving the sustainable agenda of development of SIDS. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zulmira, for those final words. And thank you so much to all of our speakers for your time today. I just wanted again to remind those of you in the audience about the upcoming Global Sustainable Island Summit taking place in May, which will include representatives from SIDS countries and also island regions and territories, such as our host, Prince Edward Island, Canada's smallest province, which is making great strides towards renewable energy and has many of the same challenges around energy as other regions that we've discussed today. So all attendees are entitled to a discount for tickets during this conference that you can find in the chat and also in your emails. I also just wanted to say thank you to all the Island Innovation team for bringing this together, again to our speakers, and also a shout out particularly to Eustace Wallace from the St. Kitts and Nevis High Commission in Canada for his assistance with this session and some other related work as well. We are very much looking forward to seeing you all at SIDS 4 in Antigua and Barbuda later this year. And of course, just a reminder that that is not the end of the conversation, but just the start of a conversation for the next 10 years, as has been very well mapped out by our colleagues at ODI. And so for everyone attending this session, we'll also be sharing some more information on the academic papers and research that ODI and Emily has been working on that will greatly contribute to mapping out the next 10 years for the development agenda for SIDS. So thank you all again. This is the last session for today of the Island Finance Forum, and we invite you to join us for tomorrow's sessions as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day.